All right. Welcome to this week's group health coaching meeting with Coach Matt. Today we're going to be talking about generational health. So, what is generational health? So, by definition, generational health is the way our family history affects our health, as well as how our health affects our children and future family members. So, throughout this presentation, I kind of want everyone to really think about your parents and how you were raised, what kind of habits your parents instilled upon you, and really think about how that's affected your health now to this day. Those same factors are going to affect your children, your grandchildren, just the same way that your parents affected their health, which affected their health, which affected their health. You know, we talk about generational wealth a lot and being able to pass down money to our children, give them a good life, make sure they can go to college, all that good stuff. Well, our healthy habits get passed down as well, whether we are intentionally instilling good habits or unintentionally passing down bad habits. So what kind of factors come into play here? Number one is genetics, our DNA. Our children look like us. They're built like us. Where we store fat, how much adipose tissue do we typically carry, how easily do we put on muscle, how do we move, all these things, what kind of things affect our stomachs, all these things are affected by genetics, our DNA. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of control over this, but it is something to keep in mind. Yep. Economics. What kind of money do we have to spend to give us access to do different things? What kind of habits do we have? Where our kids all look to us we're their first role model. And last is knowledge. What kind of education do you have? What kind of awareness do you have is going on? And right now we're going to get a little bit deeper into each of these factors. So, genetics and generational health. Like I said earlier, this is somewhat out of our control. However, DNA does adapt over time to our environment. Think of evolution. We are not walking on all fours anymore. We have slowly adapted to our environment. So, if you establish a consistent, changed environment, your DNA will mutate and adapt over time. Now, will you personally feel that? Probably not. Will your children immediately feel that? Probably not. But these are things that will change over generation to generation to generation. And by environment, I'm not just talking about where we're at. Environment's also what foods do we put in our body on a regular basis? What is our body used to kind of doing? Now, like I said, this is somewhat out of our control, and this isn't something to really, really focus on too much. So that this part's going to be pretty quick, but obviously it is a factor, and we do have to address it. Economics, although let me move my face over here. There we are. All right, so economics, how much money we have. Unfortunately, this is a big effect on things. As much as I would ideally, we would all wish we could just access nutritious food, work out, and know all this stuff. Unfortunately, we need money to access these things. Nutritious foods. Unfortunately, we all know, you go to Panera and get a salad, it's going to cost you more than going to McDonald's and getting something off the dollar menu. That is part of it. These things are an investment. Now, the thing with nutritious food, cooking at home, probably monetarily, there's not going to be as big of a difference. But when we go out, we definitely see this with restaurants. Healthier, more nutritious restaurants are expensive. We all know fast food's very cheap, convenient, easy. So when we don't have as much money, yeah, it's easier to go do these things. So we do need to sit down and invest and really try to budget out how we're going to make this work. You guys all received meal plans from us. All those meal plans are set to be no more than $10 for a meal. Like, that is one of the inputs into those meal plans. So that being said, thinking about that, we can get these nutritious foods in at home at affordable. We just have to take the time to cook. Now, also a big thing not on here that money affects is how much time we have. You don't have as much money, you're probably going to have to work more to try to earn more money and make ends meet. We don't have as much time to work out, to cook dinner and try to eat healthy, to do all these things. Fitness equipment. Gyms cost money. This program costs money. Other than going out running or swimming, in order to have access to these different fitness facilities, you have to pay something. And I'm sure you've all seen, I've talked to a lot of you, you've all done a number of different programs. You get what you pay for. You go to Planet Fitness and pay $10 a month. Well, there's a reason that costs $10 a month. So how much investment we're able to put into our health is a big part here. Also, how much health education we have. If we're living in an area with a lower property tax, and therefore our public schools aren't as well funded, we don't have as much money to go talk to health coaches, nutritionists, fitness experts, we're not going to have as much access to this information education. We're going to talk about knowledge a bit later, but anything we don't know is a problem. Obviously, we're not going to fix. So yes, your health is an investment. Now, you are all here because you've decided to make that investment in your health. So I'm sure you know that, to make an investment in your health does cost some money. But we'll talk about later how those habits and things and making that investment doesn't affect your children. It also dictates our environment. If we don't have as much money, that's going to kind of dictate where we live, right? The more money we have, the more we can just choose wherever to go and live. But if we don't have as much money, it's going to be dictated for us as to what we can afford. And, I don't think any of us have an unlimited source of income where we can pick wherever we want. So lower income neighborhoods do typically have more more pollution. And that's something you're growing up around and dealing with constantly. So our economics not only is affecting us and our health that we're living in an area with more air pollution, it's going to affect our children because they're living in the same home as us, assumably. Also, do we grow up with a lot of financial stress? Stress causes a lot of things going on with your health. It is shown people with same genetics, work out the same amount, eat similar nutrition. The person who is more stressed has a significant lower life expectancy, all things being equal. What is the biggest thing that stresses out a lot of us? Money. And if you lived in an environment growing up where you felt that financial stress, maybe you were working to help make ends meet. Maybe you were aware because you couldn't do X and X thing. You weren't allowed to have people over at the house. These different things stress us out, even if we aren't as aware of how much stress it was as a child because it's all we know. It's still stress and it's still affecting our bodies. A lot of people, when they get stressed, they break out in rashes. The chemicals released during stress are very, very powerful and affect our health a lot. It affects how we recover from workouts, how our energy is, because when we're stressed out, we're occupying a lot of energy. I talked about this when we talked about metabolism a bit. Our body doesn't know the difference between being stressed out about money and being stressed out about a predator coming to try to eat us. Okay, now we are going to move on to habits. As I said earlier, we are our children's first role models. They are going to kind of mirror what you do. I'm sure those of you who have children and maybe are a little more foul-mouthed, some of us tend to let some curses go a little more easily than others. I'm sure you noticed your child may have picked up on that. And those of you that haven't run into that, I'm sure you've noticed your child copying different things you do. Well, obviously this is going to go to our health as well. And let's really think about our parents here. Is something I've heard a lot from people is, my dad was a meat and potatoes guy. And that kind of sets the standard of how we eat. That's how we got used to growing up. What we grew up eating, those are the foods we're comfortable with. We see this a lot in different cultural difference of foods. You grew up in a different area where you had a different type of diet. Well, as an adult, if you move somewhere else, you're still going to kind of gravitate to that diet because those are the foods you're comfortable with. So what kind of foods we grew up eating in our household are kind of what we're going to naturally gravitate to. So for the opposite example to the meat and potatoes guy, there's my mom was a health nut. I still think I ended up as a health coach and trainer because I lived in a household where my mom was a health nut. Nutrition was such a big stress. Regular workouts were such a big stress of emphasis that was highly valued. And I got comfortable with those foods. I got comfortable eating salads. I got comfortable making sure with every meal we have some sort of vegetable. That is what I am used to. To me, it doesn't feel like a full meal unless we have those balanced meals. And that kind of brings us to the next thing. What do we consider important? What do we value? If we grew up just making sure we were just making sure food was on the table, you probably don't really care that much what you're putting in your body. You probably just care as all right, I have dinner tonight. Whereas the way I grew up, it was very important to have a vegetable with dinner and with every other meal. So I value that very, very highly, and it's something I think about on a regular basis just because those are the habits I grew up with. So it affects our awareness. And those kind of routines we grew up with, you probably noticed you've stuck with them. If you didn't have a regular sleep schedule growing up, it's not something that was valued. You might be up till 2 a.m. one day, going to sleep at 9 p.m. another day. You probably don't have a regular sleep schedule now as an adult. Or if you do, you probably had to do some work for it. So right now, everyone take a moment to really think about some routines that we grew up with that either we're still doing today or we had to do some hard work to kind of break. Those same routines that your parents instilled upon you, you affect your children and future family in the same type of way. And the last is knowledge. We can't teach what we don't know. If we don't know a lot about nutrition and regular exercise and how that affects us, we're not going to teach our kids that because if we don't consider it important, they're certainly not going to. And if we don't see a problem with our nutrition, we won't change. I think we all know it's not great to have a burger and fries for every single meal, but different things we don't all know that deli meats are processed foods. We don't all know why processed foods are bad for us. We don't all know what a good fat and a bad fat is. We don't all know when the right time to have carbs is and when the right time to avoid them is. And if we don't know, when we hear something that is false, we don't know that that's false. Something I talk about a lot is that coconut oil was tossed around as a superfood. Well, chemically, it's more similar to a trans fat. But if we don't know what makes an oil good or bad, we have no way to look and verify that information if it's good or bad. Also, it brings mindfulness to our habits. This is something I've definitely heard from a lot of you when we've talked about nutrition. But after we've had a couple of conversations, a lot of you have talked about, wow, I'm really realizing what I've been doing, how I've kind of sabotaged myself throughout the day. And now that I'm aware of it, it's changing. Well, if we don't know about bad nutrition, this goes for our children as well. If we don't teach them what's good and bad with nutrition, they're going to have no idea. And they're not going to try to go get good foods because they're not mindful of it. Sometimes we just got to be aware of what we're doing. And I know that sounds silly, but a lot of times we're not. You know, when you're sitting in front of the TV just shoveling food in your mouth, you're probably not that aware of like what you're tasting and how you're chewing. Same thing goes when we just don't know about nutrition. If we don't know what's good and bad, we're not going to try to do the good thing. So now that we've talked about the factors, what can we do to affect generational health? Well, number one, set values, kind of make a framework for your family. Make sure you emphasize that taking care of yourself is just as important as anything else. It's just as important as your responsibilities. I've talked about this a lot. The last thing you're going to be left with is your health. Money comes and goes, people comes and goes, but whatever's going on in your body, we can't get up and get out of our body. We don't get to do the whole spirit form thing, unfortunately. So we have to take our body wherever it goes with us. It's the same thing like putting oil in your car. Make sure you're taking care of the equipment you take wherever you go. And making sure that good nutrition, regular exercise, proper sleep is emphasized as important. That, I know, once again, it sounds obvious, but think about how many times like you've had what X and X thing for work and you stayed up extra late and only got 3-4 hours of sleep. And then your kids will see that. And when they have a lot of homework, they will put their sleep to the side. They will skip their exercise. They will skip meals if that's something you're doing to make sure you hit X and X responsibility. Your health is just as important as anything else. Jobs come and go. Your body goes with you wherever. Now, just having those values is all well and good, but we actually have to do something with them, right? So we have to build a routine. So having regular balanced meals, doing our rules of one, having meals that have one vegetable, one carbohydrate, one good fat, one protein. If that's the structure of your meals, that's the structure your children will get used to. I'm sure you know this whatever structure your parents did is what you got used to. I talked about like I feel weird if I don't have a vegetable with a meal because that's what I got used with. That was the structure I was raised with. Also, regular exercise, building that into the routine, making it something that regularly happens. Because just having that value is good, but having your children see you doing it and leading by example is very important. Also, proper sleep, having a regular bedtime. Just so you get in the habit, whatever time it may be for you to get 8 hours, 11 p.m. rolls around, you go to sleep, your household will start recognizing that's the time to go to sleep. Do it together. Also for your kids to pick up these habits, they kind of have to do it. And the easiest way to do that is to do it with you. So go on family walks, hikes, other recreational activities, paddleboarding, canoeing, whitewater rafting, anything where you guys get up and get moving together. It doesn't need to be anything intense. I'm not saying you have to go be the family that does 5Ks together. but just taking the dog for a walk all as a family is a great thing. Also having regular family dinner together, emphasizing regular meals and also that's the time where you can set the example as far as what the structure of their nutrition will be. And lastly, talk to your kids, inform them, let them know, educate them the same way you have been educated about your nutrition, about the importance of your exercise, about the importance of sleep. Now, don't scare them. You don't want them all stressed out about making sure they have to do these things, but just make sure they're informed. And also wait till they're old enough to understand. A 5-year-old, when you're talking about, isn't going to understand anything when you're talking about gut health. But 11, 12, 13-year-old, maybe they won't understand the specifics, but they'll probably get the trend of what you're talking about. All right, so that was generational health. Thank you for listening. If anyone has any questions, please comment below. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you. Goodbye.